Hello, I just wanted to take some time to share with you my birth story of our daughter Abilynn. So I started getting checked weekly at 36 weeks, and my 36-week appointment, I was 1 centimeter dilated and about 50 to 60% effaced. So I basically lost my mind because although it was very close to my due date, was in apparently no shape ready for the baby. I just kind of had a mini panic attack, like, oh my god, what if she comes now? I wasn't expecting her for another couple of weeks. So me and my husband had to work through calming me down. Got the labor and delivery bags packed and made sure I had everything sorted out for work to go on maternity leave, and my husband set up and they have stuff, contacting him, contacting family, and just kind of having a plan because I work function well that way. Um, so 37 weeks comes around. I was 1.5 centimeters. 38 weeks, 2 centimeters. 39 weeks, 2.5 centimeters. So it progressed really slowly, thankfully. And at 39 weeks and 4 days, I went into labor. It was a Wednesday morning. We had done Taco Tuesday the day before at a new taco place. So I actually woke up Wednesday morning pretty convinced I had had some bad tacos. I started having some contractions in the morning, and they were about 8 to 10 minutes apart. So I called my parents and my husband's parents, who all live in Arizona, to let them know that it probably wasn't really labor, but the contraction timer made it look like labor, and I was kind of throwing the ball in their court on whether or not they wanted to start their traveling this way or wait it out until I was a little more sure. I was very much in denial and convinced that I was having false labor, and that if I went to the hospital, they were going to send me home. So I work from home. So I went and logged on to work and was on my bouncy ball and just kind of hanging out at the house around lunchtime. I was about pretty close to 6 to 7 minutes apart. Contacted my doctor's office. They told me to take a rest, go kick my feet up and give myself a chance to rest, take some Tylenol, which I did not do, but that my contractions should slow down if they were false labor. So I did put my feet up and take a nap, and my contractions did not let up. They stayed pretty consistent. So after lunch, I let my boss know, where I was at, that I think I signed off around 4 p.m. because I was getting pretty uncomfortable at that point. Just kind of not necessarily taking my breath away, but where I wanted to just kind of stop and focus on the contraction versus doing my job. So husband got home from work around 6 p.m. and I told him I wanted to go for a walk, because I knew if I walked and they slowed down or stopped, that they were fake contractions, and if they sped up, they were real. So we went on a walk around the block, and we got stopped by somebody in the neighborhood who was pushing his son in a little car, and he's like, "Oh, you look like you're pretty close." And I was like, "Yeah, we're going to the hospital as soon as we're around this corner." So we got home, my husband showered, got our bags together, because at this point, although I was 1 to 2 minutes apart, I was still pretty convinced they were going to send me home. Of course, my hospital's 40 minutes away, so I just, in my mind, there's no way this is really happening. So we packed up the car, drove down near the hospital, had In-N-Out, got out of the car, went inside, ate at In-N-Out. Got to the hospital about 9:30. They didn't have a triage room open, which I was fine with, because again, probably fake labor. Walked up and down the hall for about 30 minutes. And I just remember once we got into the triage room and I was getting checked, I knew the sensation is like when I was like, oh, this is real. Because, normally it's like, oh, you're a 2. And this time there was some movement. And as soon as I felt that movement, I was like, oh my goodness. And I was a solid 6 with a bulging bag, 100% effaced. So we had progressed nicely, and thankfully I had gone through the first 12 hours of labor at home. So we got checked into our labor and delivery room. My birth plan was to do it all natural. My mom had really encouraged me. She did it all natural with all 3 of my siblings, me and my siblings, and she just said that there's a lot to be said for the bond that you have with your baby once you've had to work so hard to get them out. Not that other parents don't experience that, but that's kind of was my idea of what I wanted. So that's what I chose to go with. My husband was convinced I'd be begging for an epidural. So part of my birth plan was that I did not want to be offered medicine, that I would ask for it. I knew what was out there. I had done all my research. So I didn't want to be asked about being induced or asked about medication, that I would, inquire about those things if I felt it necessary. So we did progress pretty steadily throughout the time that I was in the hospital. I made it to about like 8.5 centimeters, and my bag still hadn't popped. It was pretty bulging, whatever that means, but just wasn't giving in. And so I was getting pretty uncomfortable, and contractions were getting pretty intense. I experienced my labor 100% in my hips, which is really strange, and nobody can really explain to me why, but it's all in my hips. So my husband really kind of like squeezed my hips as hard as he could and pushed them together as hard as he could to help alleviate the pressure that I was experiencing internally. And that was basically how we got through. I had started out on the ball, moved to sitting on the edge of the bed, and by the time we got around to talking about my water, having not been popped yet, I was laying in the bed on my side and kind of alternating back and forth which side I was on, so that my husband could kind of grab and push into on that hip and have that extra pressure of the bed pushing back. So they I did have them pop my water for me, just so we could continue that progression. I didn't want to get slowed up. I was, getting tired, getting restless, ready to have that baby. The pain was pretty intense. And so they did the crochet hook. I didn't feel it at all. There was no pain. It was just kind of like a warm sensation between my legs. The ugly side of after that is that I had to pee like every 10 seconds after they popped my water, and my contractions were intense enough and close enough together that I did a lot of my contractions and laboring on the toilet or near the toilet, hovering above it, kind of holding on to the wall rails in the bathroom. And what I wasn't expecting or prepared for was there was a large amount of blood, heavier than any flow I had ever had, albeit my flows are usually pretty light, but it was terrifying at first. We called the nurse in right away. She said it was totally normal. She did come and check and visually see what we had going on, but she said that was normal after the bag ruptured. So thankfully, because that really freaked me out. And so we made our way back to the bed, back and forth a lot. My husband had music playing, nature sound or something. I don't remember. We didn't do any smells. We didn't do any massage. All I wanted was that pressure around my hips. So everything we learned in our classes beforehand just went out the window because I wasn't having it. All I wanted was him squeezing my hips and staring at me and breathing with me through my contractions. It wasn't a hee-hee-hoo, it was just very controlled inhales and exhales all the way through every time. And he kind of led, and I was just focused on trying to follow his breath to keep myself from hyperventilating or getting too worked up. I wanted to make sure the baby was continuing to get oxygen. And then I just remember the nurse coming in saying that, whenever you're ready to start pushing. And I was like, okay, I'll let you know. She walked out the room, and as soon as she closed the door, I looked at my husband. I was like, you better call her back in here. I'm ready to start pushing. I wasn't 2 seconds ago, but I am now. So she came back in, and we did, I want to say 2 contractions with the nurse in the room of me pushing. I think I pushed about 4 to 5 times per contraction. We had my legs up in the stirrups for this, bearing down. It was pretty intense. So once we got through those first 2, then they called the doc in. They were like, okay, take a break till the doctor gets here, and you'll know when you're there that doesn't happen. You can't just, I'm going to take a break. Your body's basically telling you, no, we're going to keep doing this. And so we continued. I want to say there was 3 pushes after that. I'm sorry, 3 contractions that I pushed for after that, between the doc getting there and me having the baby. So 5 total contractions. But I really don't remember. It got really hazy at this part. It was just a lot of work. It was very tiring, and a lot of pressure and pain. Once that water is ruptured, there's not any cushion between you and baby anymore, so her head is really up on your bones, and it creates a whole new sensation of pressure and pain that is very uncomfortable. And we did have meconium in the water when it broke, saying that baby had been under stress at some point, but nothing else indicated that had occurred since I had been in the hospital. Since she had been being monitored, her heart rate had been good, so there wasn't like, oh, she's in stress now. It's just sometime she's been in stress. So NICU was going to be in the room to check her out after she was born. And I just remember that very last contraction that I was pushing for. I had gotten through, I want to say, the first 4 pushes, and I was exasperated. I didn't feel like I had anything left in me, and so I was going to be done with that contraction and wait for the next one, take my break, and I made that last push, and I stopped, and my husband and the nurse both look at me. They're like, "You gotta keep pushing." And I was like, "I can't." And they're like, "No, one more push." And I was like, "No, really, I can't." And I looked at my husband dead in the eyes. I was like, "I cannot do this right now." And I was like, "I have to wait for the next contraction." And there's just something in the voice of him and the nurse. They're like, "No, you have to push one more time." That in my mind, I was like, "There's something wrong with baby. I really have to. She needs to be out right now." So somehow, some way, I managed that one more push, and there she was. It was a lot slower than I expected. I definitely had the ring of fire. The doctor kind of does laps around as the baby's coming out of the canal there to ease the stretching. So you definitely feel that burning around exactly where his fingers are, exactly where the baby's head is as it's coming out. But it was kind of like baby's head like came out, and then the rest of the baby came out. It seemed slower than I expected for some reason. But anyway, she came out, and she got taken over to NICU real quick. They checked her out. She ended up being fine, thankfully. And I managed to get through it with a natural birth. I did have some oxygen during the in between contractions at the very end when I was pushing, just to make sure baby was getting oxygen. It was extremely painful, a lot of pressure, but I never cried. Like, it wasn't that type of pain. And honestly, like, I remember like the week after, I was like, I don't know if I could ever have kids again. And then after that week, it is very hard to get back to that place and remember really how intense that pain was. And even explaining this to you now, I'm like, I know it was a lot during the moment, but looking back, like, it doesn't even seem that bad. So worth it if you can make it through. It's not easy. It was a big deal at the hospital that I had done it all natural. I had a lot of nurses and doctors come in and comment on it because it's not very common anymore. But it was what was right for me and my family, and I'm thankful that I was able to experience it that way. Looking forward to sharing more with you all in the future. That's our story. My daughter was born at 3:58 a.m. on May 5th. She was 7 pounds 8 ounces and 19 1/4 inches long. And that was 39 weeks and 5 days for us. And yeah, she was perfect. All right, I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks.